Alright, so this video that I'm about to react to is one that popped up onto my feed recently, but it's a 5-year-old video. And I'm sure some of you who watch me probably also had this video show up in your feeds, especially if you're perhaps an American, I'm sure this showed up. It's by Alternate History Hub. It's a few years old. And it's why war with Iran is just a horrendous idea. Huh. I wonder why this showed up at this time. It showed up and everyone's recommended. Can't imagine why. Clearly there's not a fucking moron in office in the United States. Totally not. Well, let's go ahead and dive in.
Look at how Iraq went. There, video done.
Or Afghanistan. Well, Iraq is more similar to Iran in terms of established governmental power, military, and perhaps, well, terrain. Like, in terms of logistics and terrain, it's more similar to... Now, in terms of already established logistics, it's probably closer to Iraq, but in terms of, like, mountain, more like Afghanistan. Also, I'm realizing I'm on the wrong side of the screen. Hold up, I'm moving. Okay.
You know, I'm just a guy with a channel, but that channel is
Same.
about theorizing. Usually that...
Mine's not. Well, sometimes I theorize. I feel like a lot of the time maybe it's wrong theorize. I'm not good at the theory. No, I think I'm pretty good at the theorizing. Maybe.
That's about
Depends on
past
the day.
events, but this time, I'm going to theorize about how a possible future event might go. An invasion of Iran.
Can you put that in the form of a question?
What if that thing I said?
Now, it's not likely it will happen, ever, I hope. Please don't jinx it.
About that.
But if it does, or seems really likely because of America's current alliances with certain nations, this video is a handy last-second guide for, anyone in charge. Like,
Oh. Yeah, this would have been during his first fucking... Oh. We've had him for 6 fucking months now. For round 2. And it's worse. Like, these first 6 months he's making his first term just seem calm. Not crazy. Like,
by invading Iran is a really, really bad idea. Originally, I was going to say that justification of war with Iran would need to be extremely credible, or at least kinda credible. But after furiously fixing this video due to recent events, I feel like, nah, any justification for war would not have to be that credible.
Nope.
Or at least the response would be tenfold compared to whatever action Iran may or may not have taken to justify said response. A good analogy is if a child...
Man, I don't even think Iran did anything this time around. Iran just bombed Israel, and Netanyahu hit up Trump and was like, I'll suck your dick. And Trump was like, fuck yeah, and bombed them.
gives you an angry slap, and in response you toss him off a skyscraper. Yes, the child probably learned his lesson falling to the pavement, but now you're in prison with your own problems.
And I ain't like
Prison? No, he can keep breaking laws and stuff, and nothing happens to him.
lying.
So, small threat, massive response. This isn't like the post-9/11 world where anything could be slapped on a label as tied to terrorism, and that'd be a legitimate cause. Bush's faulty evidence on Iraq's WMDs never would have gained traction without the broader context of the war on terror. Even then, it was still protested around the globe, and not supported by nations who were in Afghanistan. After almost, God, 2 decades of this, the public is now more cynical and jaded from the idea of another Middle Eastern conflict. According to Gallup polls, don't take these as gospel, but they help prove a point, an invasion of Iran is overwhelmingly disapproved by the public, 82% as of 2019. So the backlash to any involvement in Iran would be larger than any protest of Iraq, or even the ones of the last few years. It'd be an overwhelming, resounding
Yes? No.
But you know, protests didn't work in Iraq. I doubt protests work for Iran. So off to war we go. Yippee, what now? The United States is uncontested on the seas. Many assume that this
take
part
that,
of the
Britain.
invasion, just entering the strait and blocking in the Iranians, would be simple. What could Iran do? This is where I want to introduce you to Millennium Challenge 2002. In 2002, the US military conducted a military exercise, the most expensive of its kind. It was to see how the US could successfully conduct a war against an unrelated Middle Eastern nation, to see how well it would perform. It was Iran. It was a test for a war against Iran. There was the blue team, America, and the red team, Iran. For the red team, the chosen
You mean totally not Iran? Come on. Totally not. Not at all.
commander was retired Lieutenant General Paul Van Riper. At his disposal was only equipment that Iran would have: small speedboats, low-flying planes, short-range missiles, the whole shebang.
Oh, I think I've heard of this story before.
So the exercise began. Van Riper, knowing that the US Navy would immediately sail too close, began to attack first. He sent off his suicide bombing boats. They'd give coordinates to where the US ships were and relay it back to the missiles. Then the ships would run straight into the US cruisers, detonating. In the first phase of the exercise, 19 ships, including 3 aircraft carriers, were sunk. Estimates for the total US casualties this would have brought was 20,000.
Now, okay. One thing I think we do need to establish, though, with how... I don't know if he's going to get into it. And of course, I do still think war with Iran is just downright a horrible idea, right? It's worse than Iraq. A bad idea. Lots of people will die. Death bad. War bad. But I think using wargaming here as an example is perhaps a bad idea, because in wargaming, at least from my understanding of how the United States conducts it historically, is that the United States puts themselves at a deliberate big disadvantage while giving massive, like they essentially are like, okay, planning for the worst of the worst while the enemy is operating at the best that they can possibly operate at, is my understanding of how wargaming essentially is run. So that you can be just better prepared for shit going sideways when it goes sideways, because that's what happens in war. So I think this is perhaps a bad point, bad thing to pull from, to use as an argument here, just from like a purely argumentative, persuasive standpoint.
The largest navy in the world was decimated in combat by a technologically inferior enemy. Granted, all of this was because of a 40-year career veteran of the Marines. He said that he knew the US would be too reliant on their own technology, and
Cody kind of brought it back, mentioned somewhat what I was talking about, but still not quite enough.
Deal of power that they'd underestimate his forces. The US hoped the red team would have used satellite or radio to relay orders, yet instead he used motorcycle carriers. So what did the US do in response to this news? Simple. They just rigged it. The red team was not allowed to use suicide boats, nor would they be allowed to shoot down planes using radar. The exercise was meant to show the blue forces winning overwhelmingly. The US learned nothing, is what I'm saying. So would a war with Iran lead to an immediate 20,000 dead? No. I doubt Iran's generals would be as efficient as he was. However, they don't have to be as efficient. They just have to follow the same strategy, and it could produce similar results. Imagine the backlash and blow to morale if just one aircraft carrier is sunk. or 1,000 Navy personnel die. Long story short, it isn't that easy of a fight, and we haven't even landed in Iran yet. So let's talk about the initial invasion. Iran is not Afghanistan or Iraq. Afghanistan has a mountainous terrain, but its central government at the time, the Taliban, was nothing
Talking about the shit I was talking about at the beginning.
more than just a militia force. Iraq, while it did have a sizable military, had only 40% of the million troops they once had a decade earlier. Most of them were poorly trained. Not to mention the nation itself is flat desert connected by highways, allowing coalition troops to easily invade from north and south right into Baghdad. Both operations took around a month, resulted in minimum American casualties, and took down the governments with ease. Iran would not be this.
Yeah.
Iran has double the military Iraq did in 2003. And they were better trained, equipped, and commanded. The entire nation is a geographic fortress, a plateau. Any relatively flat area is either uninhabited or on the coast. So actually invading the nation will require going through natural choke points. Highways would be the best options for troops landing in the Persian Gulf, going north into Iran. Even then, it isn't as simple as the last two wars in the initial stage. It's not like Iran would win this fight. However, the opening invasion certainly would have higher casualties than the public expected from 2 decades ago. And that right there is also a blow to morale. But Tehran is, after a month or 2 or 3, taken. And now the Americans are left in charge of a people who didn't wish they were there due to a war with an iffy cause. Iran has major issues. It's a theocracy. It forces women to wear head veils, promotes radical extremism. Yeah, its government is horrible. But no matter how a people feel
I like how he made the disclaimer of less so than
about
our
a government,
ally.
there is nothing more uniting to them than a foreign power invading their land. Which is why I find the idea that any real human could think doing the same invasion/nation building tactic would work the third time, but maybe it isn't supposed to work. Maybe it's just supposed to depose a rival for others who can't directly do it themselves no matter the outcome, but that's just my guess. Iran right off the bat has a population larger than Afghanistan and Iraq combined. An insurgency in Iran would be worse than any we faced before in the War on Terror. It's less Iraq and more Vietnam. Now it could be easily made worse if the US decided to disband the military like they did last time, leading to an influx of military-grade equipment going into the hands of now unpaid men trained for combat. Not to mention the demographic problem, 40% of Iran's population are not Persian, so various people like Kurds, Azeris, Lurds, Arabs, or Balochs may or may not get along once that central government breaks down. Oh, and the 8% who are Sunni, who certainly in no way would be influenced to break away from the Shia Iranian state by any outside influences. Ethnic cohabitation has been a problem that Tehran has needed to deal with, well, since the idea of an Iranian nation-state has existed. And while I don't know if these ethnic groups will break off or fight amongst each other, I do know that this is not a situation you want a foreign Western power to deal with. Now, getting past the rough invasion, the difficult terrain, the angered, fractured, large population, and an insurgency, the politics come in.
Yay! My favorite!
If we went into Iran, this would be a conflict/situation that we'd see for the next 20 to 30 years.
You think only 20 to 30 years?
It would break the Iranian state and be tore up from the outside by neighboring powers who each want a chunk. The Sauds would now have an opportunity to export their own brand of Islam against the Shias, spreading Wahhabism by money.
Going into Iran is essentially just going, like, this situation, at the least, because of how, like, long Iran itself has been a state. Like, Saudi Arabia is a new state. Palestine and Israel being independent states are young to the geopolitical situation here. Like, the only nation state here that's actually like as old as Iran, roughly, give or take hundreds of years, maybe. Turkey, Ottoman Empire. The only two, like Turkey and Iran kind of shared much of the Middle East with each other for quite some time. Back and forth a little bit now and then. Rome was there before the Ottomans, blah, blah, blah. We're very oversimplifying Middle Eastern history here and geopolitics, but outside of Iran and Turkey, the nation states of the Middle East are pretty young. So, this destabilization, I would argue, would cause a situation worse than the two-state solution. Or, well, maybe two-state problem. It really has not been a solution for anything. Has only caused more problems and not really solved anything. Well, it solved one thing for Europeans. It got the Jews out of Europe. Like, it's really kind of what the goal was. It was anti-Semitism. Whoa! Whoa! Europeans hate the Jews? And so they were like, oh, we can use Hitler and World War II as justification to get them out of Europe, and they'll go willingly if we fund them and give them money to take over the lands of the people that have been living there for centuries, whereas they had been living in Europe for centuries. Well, it's a great idea. Great idea. Not at all going to cause problems. Well, cause problems for the Europeans because they'll be in a different part of the world fighting amongst each other, trying to figure shit out. Well, we just give them money and have them deal with it, right? I will forever stand by that the creation of Israel was fueled by anti-Semitism and not in the way that people think as a direct response to Hitler and for the safety of Judaism for Jews, but purely because Europeans wanted the Jews out of Europe. Anyways, that's a tangent. But yes, destabilizing Iran, taking out Iran's government, would cause a worse problem than what we've been dealing with for the last 70 years. My opinion.
Or by blood into the nation. Russia could export arms to keep the Americans busy against insurgents. Any Islamic extremist group is going to have a field day carving up territory, and America is going to have to save face and spend trillions of dollars on another endless war, all while the
trillions of dollars on war instead of helping the people. Whoa.
The Iranian people are caught
instead
in the middle,
of healthcare,
and the state is reduced from a pretty iffy theocracy into a war zone, creating an issue we'll see even after those who started this war are already in their grave. I don't think there will be a war. At least even with my cynical lens, I can't imagine we'd see an Iran invasion.
Can you give this an
just
update,
like
Cody?
in Iraq or Afghanistan.
5 years later? Well,
realistically, I
later?
could see more sanctions being done on Iran, their air and naval space restricted, their economy sinking even further. I wouldn't be surprised if already there isn't plans to spark some form of rebellion within Iran itself. Maybe even cyber war. Who knows? The thing about interesting times...
Yeah, our lovely, totally not orange dictator gutting the American cybersecurity before doing all this shit. Such big brain.
Is that they could always be more interesting. How many times it would take for governments to realize this type of strategy doesn't work is for our descendants to find out. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
That was why war with Iran is just a horrendous idea by Alternate History Hub. I think I shared my thoughts enough on this video. I think this is a bit of an older video from Cody. I think he could do better. I think his videos of the last 3-4 years are certainly better. Like I think his COVID and post-COVID era, I think we saw a definite. I think got a lot better at this kind of thing. I think this video is a bit still. I don't know. I think he just could do better. I think current Cody could do a whole lot better. This one, I don't think his, at least the way in which he posed his argument here, I don't think has necessarily aged all that well. At least with what the kind of arguments that I expect from Cody today. Now, if I think I actually watched this video when it came out in 2019. Before I was doing any sort of reaction, because I didn't start reacting to stuff. I didn't start posting until like June 1st, 2020. No, July 1st, 2020. So, yeah, I think Cody today could do a whole lot better job with this kind of a video. I think this has shown its age in terms of Cody's growth as a persuasive writer and content creator. Yeah,